I'm back, guys, just in time for the major. And because it's the major, it means we don't just have fantasy, we got Pickems as well. And you might have already seen I posted my Pickems on Twitter and Blue Sky. So I'm not going to kind of edge you through it while I pick each team. I'm just going to leave it straight up in front of you what my Pickems are. I will run you through my thought process behind it. I think I've got some interesting picks here, but the ones that are most obvious are the O3s. I think everyone has Rare Atom as O3. They're the weakest team here. It just makes sense. Imperial I put over FlyQuest for two reasons. One, I could never put FlyQuest in O3, guys. You can see I've got them going through. I do this every single time. I support the boys. I always have them going through. It's just something I do, even though they probably aren't favored to go through. So grain of salt on that. If you're copying my results, you don't need to copy that one. But I wouldn't put them O3. I think they're definitely good enough to take a team down, but I think Imperial, the reason I put them there is I wasn't impressed by their results in the RMRs and even in events kind of leading up to them. I feel like they're nowhere near as good as they were at the start of the year. And I think particularly some of the individuals that carried them in those earlier events aren't performing. Phelps in particular had a really rough RMR, unfortunately for my fantasy, but that's why I've gone for those two for the O3. For the 3Os, I've got the two teams that I felt had the best pathway to get to 2-0. So both of them have the most straightforward opening games. Mongols have Rare Atom and Complexity have FlyQuest. So both of those will be sitting 1-0. And obviously it depends on the results of the others, but it looked like they had fairly favorable 2-0 games and shouldn't be playing each other. So that's the reason I put them both as 3-0, even if Complexity is a bit of a long shot. I feel like they're very hit and miss as to who shows up or if they perform on the day. But I think they're a better choice than, say, Liquid, just because Liquid have Cloud9 as their opener, which is already super rough. They could just lose it straight out the gate, and I didn't want to risk it that way. And I just felt like their pathway through looked a little trickier. So that's the 3-0, that's the O3. The advanced ones, I think that some of these are straightforward. We should be expecting Liquid, Pain, Furia, and VP to pass. Remember, this is in front of a stage, a crowd. They're on the stage. So that definitely should be impacting your choices here, because some of these teams we know haven't necessarily had the experience or don't always show up when it comes to stage games. So that's why teams like Passion UA, for instance, Big, I'm passing on here because I don't believe that they'll perform in front of the stage to the same level they did in the RMR itself. I think that Fnatic is a team here that you could technically replace with either Cloud9 or MIBR. I think either of those are pretty good choices in that section, but I just felt like the experience of the players on Fnatic and some of the teams that have been playing recently have been quite good compared to, say, Cloud9, who I think had a pretty easy run through the RMR, even though they took it to 3 maps first phase. I think overall that their actual wins were pretty... the teams they should have beat, right? So I feel Fnatic have been tested a little bit more leading up to this event, so I have slightly more faith in them, but either is a good choice. And MIBR, I'm still a little weird on. Like, obviously they did great in the RMR, but didn't do great at Qatar. They've been very up and down. They haven't played that many big events this year, including stage events, so I'm still a little shaky on them, and so I don't have them going through. But yeah, that's my Pickems. Pretty straightforward, I think. Obviously, I've got a few little twists on what the majority are doing, but for the most part, the general basis here and the ideas I think are pretty sound, and I think it's the elimination stage. It's where it's going to get interesting. I think that this is pretty straightforward, but who knows? It's best of ones for openers, so anything can happen. Anyway, let's get to the real good stuff. Let's look at fantasy. Just quickly, these are my results from the last RMR. I thought it was worth looking at just because I got top 17% with 3 players not even making it to the major. So shout out Nerds and Zontix for carrying me through. But it kind of shows you don't necessarily need to pick players that will actually make it to the next stage, as long as you pick players that will perform. So we'll try and keep that in mind when we look at our draft. Also, there's 3 games left now, the 3 final major games. So currently number 5 got a 10-point buffer on number 6, and I'm chasing number 4 by about the same amount of points. So got some room, but I also have a lot of a way to go. And guys, I have to beat Maui Snake. He's 17 games played. He missed a game. I cannot lose to a guy that missed a game. That would be incredibly humbling. We need to beat him. So that's the objective over the next 3 games. Let's take a look. So looking at the players, I think Furia are a good example of some of the strategies you can use for this event, because I feel that when you're looking at a team like Furia and their third, fourth, fifth best player are the same sort of prices as stars of some of the lesser teams, you should maybe be considering looking further down the list for some of your budget and even maybe considering some of the stronger players from the top teams. So Yuri, for instance, I actually think could be a really cool choice for Furia because he's not going to be picked much at all. And Furia are very underpicked in general because of their restrictive pricing. So he could be a cheeky pick. I feel the same about Senzu, even though the rest of the Mongols are all actually fairly reasonable price considering this team is one of the favorites. Senzu is going to be very underpicked and has a good chance of performing really well. And I think that's the same when it comes to complexity, for instance. Elige, 222k, the most expensive player, not going to be picked very much. And I feel that he, similar to Senzu, has a really good chance. In fact, for Elige, it's even higher because he is a league above the other players on his team of actually getting you a lot of points. That doesn't necessarily apply to some of the other teams here. For instance, I don't think Electronic or NAF are worth getting, but Flit, Jame, pretty good price. I think Ultimate and Twist, good price. But Yakinda, who is the most picked player, I think he's really risky for 189, and I think there's a better player for basically the same price, and that player is Flamus. We'll get to him in a moment, but 189 for the worst player on Liquid, you could get one of the best players on one of the worst teams. Yeah. Is that a good idea? Maybe. We'll talk about it. I think Pain, though, similar to Complexity, actually have a lot of really nice priced mid-tier players. So, like, Holzer, Grim, Floppy, I think are all really reasonable prices. And I think the same with Big Zera, NQZ, Cowas, and Snow. And I think both these teams are going to be slept on here and are really nice ones to double up on because you're not spending too much of your budget, but you're getting two players from one of the teams that has a very good chance of going 3-0, 3-1, or 3-2, right? These two teams will go through, right? Unless something dramatically wrong happens. And so getting two of the cheaper players from here who are solid performers, I think is a really smart strategy. And then you can get one of the better players from here and find your budget elsewhere. Big and MIBR, to me, these two teams have the same kind of pricing as Complexity and Pain, but I think are a little riskier to pick into. But Safe and Sirison for both 200k are very interesting, and I think Tabsin for 192 is, again, maybe similar to Yakinda in pricing and maybe a better chance of performing well. Maybe. I think FlyQuest's pricing is just off because it's inflated from their Asia RMR and just the Asia region in general. I think if their pricing was on parity with Gamer Legion, I'd be more interesting. Like if INS was the same price as Torsen or Flamus, I might be like, okay, I'll grab INS. But for 211, for a team that probably doesn't get through, it's way too much. But Gamer Legion are well priced. I think that Flamus, as mentioned, for 190 is exceptionally well priced. He was so good during the RMR and has been a real fire starter for this team. So I feel like for 190, really good value. I think Wildcard also have some good value. I think Susp is maybe the best bronze pick that you can get at 181. Maybe Vinny, there's a decent case for. But the problem with these two teams is, do they actually get through? Oh, it feels like a stretch. I actually kind of put Wildcard maybe as having a better chance than Imperial, just purely on recent form. Wildcard have looked better than Imperial, and Wildcard beat Liquid, so I think they could definitely do it. And if you're going to be drafting them, it's Susp, it's Fuzi, maybe JBA. I think those three are probably the best value for money. Sonic's just a little too expensive for a risky team. For Imperial, Vinny, good value. Desenchi, good value. And if you really believe this team's going to bounce back, try for 199. But I think Desenchi and Vinny are the guys to go. Passion UA, I think that what we saw in the RMR is what I expected. I thought they'd be like Bait and, from previous RMRs, win their best of ones, but struggle in the best of threes. And they did struggle. They finally got through, but it wasn't easy. And I think when it comes to playing on the stage and with tougher opponents, I don't rate their chances here. So I wouldn't really be drafting them. I think maybe Fear is an okay price, but again, this team's incredibly risky. I think Fnatic have a reasonable chance to get through. I kind of said my piece of them versus Cloud9. And pricing is very similar between the two. Obviously, BlameF and Heavy God are two of the most picked players because they were both so good during the RMR. And I think they are good choices. I think they're both really good performers and will get you points. I think BlameF to me, is slightly better than Heavy God here because A, he has more experience, B, his playstyle is maybe a little safer, and 3, I just think Fnatic have a slightly higher chance than Cloud9 of actually getting through. That said, I don't think there's a problem with picking Heavy God. It's just there's more questions around, can he do it on a stage in front of tens of thousands of people? You know, can he continue that success against tougher teams? Because Cloud9 had a pretty easy run through. So I still have questions around Cloud9. I do still think Icy's a good choice though, just because he's obviously the AWPer and played actually really well during the RMR. I think he was the second best player on the team. And his playstyle means he's less likely to be costing you points than Heavy God if Heavy God has a bad game. So I don't mind Icy, but I can see the case for either of those two. Crim's body, good eco choices, particularly Crim's, I think on the stage. He's not going to crack under the pressure. Rare Adam are only here for eco picks, and if you really must pick one, it's got to be Kaze, but I think this team is a huge mistake to draft into. They're going to get stomped out, and you're going to lose a lot of points, so I would not draft them. For my draft, I wanted to ground it in a team that I thought was definitely going to get through, but I didn't really like the pricing on any of the top teams. So I'm going to go with a double up on Pain. I think they've just got slightly better individuals and complexity to do this with. NQZ was brilliant during the Air Americas RMR, and Cowwares also performed well, plus has really good headshot machine activation. So I felt that those were two really good role players. Didn't also cost me much. I also wanted to grab one more player from one of the top teams, but pricing again, very prohibitive. Decided to go with Ultimate. I think that against some of the weak opposition here, he has a good chance of performing well. He is very picked, but I think the rest of my team isn't, so I'm not too bothered about that. And yeah, I just felt like when you compare it to a lot of the teams here, for that price point, he's actually a player that can take over a game. I've already said that I think Flammers is the best value for money pick here because he just is straight up. Even though I don't think Gamer Legion make it through, I think he'll play well. Gives me 200,000 left, which is plenty to get a lot of good choices. Didn't want any of these players, obviously. There was a case to get either Searson or Safe. I probably would have gone for Safe, and I'm still in the back of my head thinking, oh, should I get Safe? But I really want to grab Icy. I think that he has a much higher ceiling. I think in his team, he's set up more for success than Safe or Searson are. So that's going to be my fifth player. Even if Cloud9 don't make it, even if Gamer Legion don't make it, I think the individuals are enough to carry me through. Pain are going to be slept on. I'm not sleeping, but I might be sleeping in. Rise and shine. We'll try and wake up and catch these games if we can. Anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know what you're drafting. Let's chat about it in the comments. Let me know your Pickems as well. We get to do that this time around. And as always, good luck.